Hello, welcome to Making Photos. I'm Ian Butterfield. It's the start of 2022, so time for me to look back at my top 10 images from 2021. I went through the selection process and talking about each of the images on a recent live stream. So this is what I had to say. Looking back at 2010, not 2010, at 2021. Where did 2010 come from on that? I know where the 10 came from. It's me thinking about my 10 best images of the year. This is something I've started doing and something I would encourage you to do as well. Go through what you shot last year. Find your best 10 images. But why do I encourage people to do it? Why do I do it myself? Well, it acts as a benchmark. I've only got, really 2 years of doing this. I might retrospectively do some other years, but it's always good to look back on the year, and what I discovered by looking back on my year was that I thought that 2021 had been a bit of a write-off because of COVID, and then I saw how many studio shoots I actually had during the year, and I was quite encouraged. I think, well, maybe there was more hope to it than I thought. Maybe it was a better year than I thought. But it's also a benchmark that I can look back at. I can look back at the previous year's set of images and look at this year's and think, have I improved? And if I haven't, why not? I like to think I have. So it's a good benchmark on that. So that's one of the reasons I do it. How do I do it? Well, and I'll do a video on this at some point about using the star rating in Lightroom or whatever other tools you use for managing your images. You can have up to 5 stars in most bits of software, and I use just to talk through them very, very briefly. 0 star is something that is basically hidden, not even going to develop it. 1 star are images that I will develop, but nobody else gets to see other than me, largely because they are ones that really aren't ready for publication, but I want to keep it for maybe a record reason, or maybe it's an image that went wrong and I might need it later on, things like that, or it may be just personal. It's something that I want as something to remind me of something, a snapshot, but it's not good for public consumption. 2-star images is I'm happy to share with anyone, anytime, so I will. Those are, anything you see will be typically 2-star or above. 3-star I use for the best handful of images from the shoot. It may be 1 image, it may be no images actually, but usually it's the best image or the best 2 or 3 images from that particular shoot. So when I'm trying to find my best 10 for the year, the way I do it is I start off with all the 3-star images from the year. And that worked out, there was 200 and odd of them this time. And then I just went through those and removed any images which I knew there and then weren't going to be in the top 10, very easily not in the top 10. For example, I might use the 3-star rating for all my theatre stuff, to indicate the ones which are going to be the display prints at the theatre. So I know that I was never going to use more than 1 image from a particular production. So I went through and removed all bar the best image, the best one from each play. I knew if it was a client shoot, I did mark out a whole group as 3 stars as the ones I wanted to present to the client. And I was never going to use all of those, so I just found the best one from there. And I then whittled it down that way on that first pass down to about 20... No, it was about 48 images. I got it down to about 48 images at that point. Then I went through again and whittled it down, I think, to 20. And the way I did that was, if I got images from 2 similar genres or similar shoots, or from the same shoot, I would go through and say, right, okay, of those 3 images, which are all very similar things like water splash, I did 2 water splash events. So I got images from both of those. So, right, looked at those, right, which was the best of those, and I whittled it down that way until eventually I got 20, and then it really got hard going through those 20 images to try and find 10 of them. And sometimes it's, well, I really want to keep that image in, but the others are better. And eventually I got 10 images, which I'll now show you in Lightroom. The first of the images, now these should all be organized in order in which I shot them. At the start of the year, I'd borrowed some of these posing blocks from Rick, who got them on loan from Pixar Pro, and I'm gradually creating a number of images to showcase my product photography work, and this was one I wanted to do. 14 doctors and a TARDIS, and I've mocked it up as though it was an actual product coming from the figurines collection, with my disclaimer at the bottom on there. And it took a fair bit of work. It's actually a focus stacked image. It's a fake background on there. It was blue to start with, but then I added this swirl effect, and I've masked it round. So I actually spent a lot of time just creating this image to really sort of highlight my work as a photographer who could do commercial product work. So that's why that one's in there. I'm rather partial to it. I rather like it, and you can see if I zoom in that everything's absolutely tack sharp, and that's down to the focus stacking techniques on there. You can even read what's on the front of the TARDIS. This TARDIS and that sign, which is tiny on there. You can see how small it is. We can actually read everything on the screen on there. So that was number 1 on there. At some point I might do a video a little bit more about how I created that. My next one was pretty much a grab shot actually here in the studio, but I've kept it because well, I was creating it to try and just, I think it was for a blog post at the time from what I remember, and I thought it's an unusual way of doing a self-portrait, in that I'd set the camera up on a tripod. It wasn't remote trigger enabled on it, but I focused on the screen of the video camera, but just kept me out of focus in the background. And I just like the elements on here that, okay, I'm in there on the 3rd line. The image here, it is more central, but it kind of works. And again, I'm on the 3rd line this side, and it just sort of tells the story of the studio, and is a good, useful image for blog posts about live streams and things like that. Let me just bring up the shooting information on there, basically, I wasn't using the studio lights, as you can see from here. I was shooting it as a 1/6 of a second, and I just kept still for it. Camera was on tripod, image stabilization off, so that's how I create it. The only thing I would say about this is remember to dust your equipment before doing these type of shots. And you can see on here, you can see how sharp it is. You can see the individual pixels on the screen, and if you're wondering about the crack in there, that's when I dropped the camera, not last year, year before, and I had to replace part of the screen on there. I did a fix which is technically not possible to do because it's all glued in, but unfortunately in ungluing it, well, the screen developed a few cracks, let's say that, but at least it still works. The next one, I've worked a fair bit over the year with Tatiana, a great model, and I love working with her. She's so inventive and creative, and she's willing to try lots of things, and her thought processes really follow along with my own about showing people as real people and not just this artificial look that we're sometimes guilty of as photographers. And during one of the shoots, we wanted to show this idea maybe of loneliness and not being part of the in crowd. So I got her sitting on the chair and sort of huddled up, arms around her knees, and I deliberately framed this with her right over to one side because I felt that gave a more unsettling look to it. I also feel that that particular sort of setup works well with it, because it gives the idea that the character and the figure that Tatiana is portraying is just on the edge of things with it. So that made it into the list. That was an easy choice, and the monochrome processing on there, absolutely wanted to keep that, because again it gives that a bit more of a gritty feel to it. Now this next one's an interesting one. I ummed and ahed about keeping this one in, but in the end I decided to. It was a shot, one of the first shots with my new R5, which I acquired this year. And the reason I had to create it was because I'd bought a USB-C to USB 3.1 cable for tethering. And what turned up was not a USB 3 cable, it was a USB 2 one, as you can see from the end of it. So I reported this to the manufacturer and said, hang on a minute, your website says this is USB 3 and that's not what's come. And they said, are you sure? Can you send us a photo to prove this? So this was the shot I did, and it's done with daylight. It was at home. I just put it on a bit of white paper, and because it's quite a stiff cable, I was able to just focus in on the M on there. It was with my macro lens and all handheld with it, and it's a really nice sort of little product shot, which I know that image will get used if I'm talking about connecting things. I want to illustrate that. It's a good blog post type image about connectivity, and I just like the red, white and black sort of colour schemes in there. So I've sort of kept that one in. It kind of tells a story, and it's just an interesting way of showing products. It's a good stock image. It'll probably go up to Alamy at some point as well. Then we're moving on to events here in the studio, and as I say, we did two splash events during the year, and I really like this particular one. I had about 3 from the splash events in the top, certainly in the top 50, and this one, even in the top 20, there was at least 2 of them. And eventually I went for this one because it looks unposed. So often with these shots, I mean, the way you have to do it is you get the model doing the pose first, and then somebody throws the water and you aim to synchronize the shot and everything. But with this one, the expression and the way the water, you can see our expression through the water and the hand in there, it just looks as though I've caught this off-guard moment in there. And absolutely everything is tack sharp on it as well. I was really pleased with that. You can see individual water droplets on and the water glistening on the sleeve. So I was really pleased with that. So that one went in there. Again, I can't remember where this was from. I think this was with a shot I did with myself working one-to-one with the model. I was so impressed with her with these Red Room sets that I then ran it as an event in the studio during the year. But there's something really engaging about this one. The eye contact with the camera, that I've vignetted it partly in camera, and Did I do it in post as well? Add a vignette? Yeah, surely. Yes, I did on there. With it. So it's a combination of lighting the background with a gridded light just to give this sort of vignetted look. But the key thing about it is the engagement between the subject and the viewer. That looks straight down the camera lens on there. I think is so powerful with that shot. I think it's worked well. Now, again, working one-to-one, and I can't remember the model's name, Afra. I'd put a casting call up because I wanted somebody for one of my training videos, and I said, if you'll just pose, it'll only take me 30 minutes to record the video with you, and then I'll do whatever shots you want for your portfolio in my studio. And she was a ballet dancer and wanted some ballet photos, and this was one of the shots that we created in the studio. And I just like the engagement on there, the relaxed pose, and I think this one was created at one of those moments where we just paused from shooting and we were just chatting about what else we wanted. And she was in this really relaxed pose. I had the camera in my hands. I just lifted it up and got this relaxed shot. And it's one of my favourites from the shoot. And the black and white gives a sort of almost documentary sort of feel to it on there. And unusually for me, there's no rim lighting on it. It's just a very simple, straightforward lighting on there, which I think works well. In the summer, some of you may remember I had food poisoning. Well, this is from the day when I got the food poisoning. We'd gone out to visit a few places in North Yorkshire, including a church which had Stations of the Cross, which some of you may know. I've got a bit of a thing about photographing the Stations of the Cross in churches. I'm quite fascinated with how those are depicted in different ways. And this particular church, something very unusual in that instead of it being artwork within the church, it's actually the road, the path, quite a steep path that you walk up, and the Stations of the Cross are marked with crosses. But inside the church, there's this stone altar, and it was just a handheld shot. You can see 20th of a second handheld, but it is absolutely tack sharp. A little bit of noise in there because I'm at 1000 ISO. But considering a 20th of a second handheld, I'm really impressed with that. Now, why was this possible? I was only shooting at 24mm, means I was able to handhold this, done a black and white conversion to it, added a little bit of a vignette, and if I show you the processing on here, you'll see that I've brought the highlights all the way down just to try and get as much detail through the window as possible, and the shadows up to just reveal what's in the shadows in there. And I must admit the style and the processing on this is somewhat influenced by some of the stuff that Gary Platt has been sharing with me and through the Facebook group over the year. So inspired by Gary on that one, but wanted to keep it in the collection for the year. I had to include this. This was a client shoot for funeral directors, and not only did I create the image here, but I also designed the billboard, and this is up on a big billboard in Stockport now, advertising the funeral directors. This was all shot on location, but it's actually a composite shot. And let me just explain a little bit about that. I did shoot the funeral director with the horse-drawn hearse there, but there was a couple of things. I lit her using speed light just to add extra light to her and just to make her pop in the image, which I knew wasn't going to light the hearse, the horse-drawn hearse. But that wasn't a problem. What was a problem, what turned out was I'd originally thought, okay, I know I'm going to have a shallow depth of field, but I think it will look okay. when I saw the final images, I wasn't convinced with the shallow depth of field, but I'd already taken a few shots while I was testing everything. And so I used one of those shots where I'd focused on the horses, combined with the shot where I was focused on the undertaker, on the funeral director, and I composited them together. And that actually turned out to be the right thing, because the horses got a little bit restless. And on a lot of the images where the funeral director was looking perfect for the camera, the horses were looking in different directions and were moving and things like that. You can see it's a 15th of a second because I was dragging the shutter because of the background. And the ones where the horses were great, the funeral director didn't quite like how she was looking on there. So I was able to select one, select the two independently. The other little bit of post-production work, and over the year you've heard me comment a fair bit about sky replacements, and I'm, as you know, I'm a little bit cynical about those, about how when they are done, they need to be done right. And I hope I've done this one acceptably correctly, etc. It is a standard sky background, but what I've done is I've matched the colour of the sky to the autumnal colours in the image, and I actually warmed the image up. It was you won't see it in the settings on here because it was a PSD file that I've exported as a DNG. One of the things I did was I warmed the image up a little bit so that the sky and the autumnal colours all matched on there. But because it ended up on a billboard, that's one of the reasons I kept it as an image of the year. Last one, film noir shoot that I did here at the studio, and it's just one of the images I selected from that. Really pleased with it. The use of the blinds, the light coming through there, that was our primary light. I also lit the rim lighting on there to give this real nice film noir look. And there's the video all about this on the YouTube channel, which you may have seen. I also included it on one of the Sunday nights not so long ago, so you know more about how that was done. So that is my 10 for the year. That's the full set. I think that's not a bad representation of my year. I'd love to see your selection of 10 images from your year, folks. Finding your top 10 images from the previous year is something I encourage every photographer to do. It acts as a benchmark so that you can compare where you're at as a photographer one year to the next. It's also quite enjoyable to look back at what you've achieved over the last 12 months. So if you do have a go at that, then please post the images in my Facebook group. In the next video, on the screen now, I will be looking at the top 10 images of 2 photographers who've submitted them to me. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, keep making great photos, and thanks for watching. Bye.